and observe the mind. But let's go into the neuroscience a bit about how the brain works in relation to that, and how meditation can actually lead to changes in the brain. So recently, you see to this graph, there has been an explosion of studies done around mindfulness. This is just an indication of scientific studies. If you search, about mindfulness, this is the number of articles published related to that. And you see, it's quite remarkable. And a lot of these articles explain how it can actually change the structure and the function of the brain. And to understand how it happens, one important concept that we need to cover here is neuroplasticity. Has anyone heard about neuroplasticity? Yeah? Okay. How would you explain that in an easy, quick way?
It's a bouncing ball. It's can actually grow and make water in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the brain is actually quite plastic. It was until recently it was believed that the brain was after an adult age it was fixed, so similar to other organs of the body, that it would not really change much. But actually, that's not how it happens. It happens that depending on our experiences, our brains are actually constantly changing, and this is what allows us to, for example, I would allow me today to learn the piano, to play the piano. I never played, but when my daughter started to play, I said, okay, let me try to learn a little bit, see how it goes. And I can say that it was remarkably difficult to coordinate the movement of these two hands. And I did not persist enough to become good at it, but I could notice some progress. And it's like the amount of practice that you have is what will allow the certain areas of the brain associated to coordinating those movements to become active. And the more you have the practice, the more that neural pathway becomes used, and that will then make these connections stronger. So it will actually change the structure and the function of the brain. So everything that we do, everything that we feel, everything that we think has an impact in changing our brains. So the beauty of this is actually that we can be intentional about it. So there is even a way that Dan Siegel, who is a psychiatrist, a Harvard psychiatrist, that also is a director of Center of Mindfulness in the University of California, he describes in a way that where attention goes, neural firing flows, and neural connection grows. So by training our attention in certain ways, you can actually influence how your brain can change. That's the essential concept of neuroplasticity. Any question about the concept? Yeah. So and there have been studies, specific studies explaining the impact of meditation in terms of changes in the brain. And one study which somehow was referred to by Ben Harris in that video is a study here that has indicated that they compared two groups. It was a group of non-meditators and a group of experienced meditators. They were put in a fMRI scan, so the head was kind of all full of those plugs of this magnetic resonance, so that they could measure the activity of the brain. And then the brain activity was measured both during meditation and also at rest. And what they could see is that when comparing the two groups, the group of meditators, the activity in the brain was in this area of the brain associated to mind wandering, which is the default mode network that Dan Harris was referring to, is the area of the brain associated to this region of the brain associated to not only mind wandering, but also called self-referential thinking. So it's the kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next, or what, so really kind of the I story that we tend to have all the time. So that area of the brain was much less active in the group of meditators compared to the other group doing the meditation practice. So they really could demonstrate that change in the physiology of the brain. And more than this, also at rest, they could also notice that the that area of the brain was much more connected to the executive function of the brain. So this area here that we're going to be talking more and more about it, the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain associated to the more executive part of functions of rational thinking, was much more engaged as well at rest. So that suggests that meditation can lead to changes in the brain, which allow the person to be less mind wandering and actually can more intentionally also engage into rational thinking whenever required intentionally. And the other study was this study in relation to the experiment was again two groups, one group of experienced meditators, a group of novice meditators. They were put into again, fMRI scan and measure brain activities, and the test was about a thermal hot touch. So there was a hot touch in the forearm with a thermal node, and what they could measure is that during the touch itself, when there was a pain, the activity in the area of the brain associated with pain was really high on both groups. So quite normal. You have the pain, and then you can see, this signal going quite high in that area of the brain. But the key difference was actually that before the touch and also after the touch, there was a big difference. The response in the group of non-meditators was much higher compared to the group of non-meditators. The group of meditators, sorry. So that suggests that actually meditation then could lead to changes in the brain that allow those people to just respond to the trigger as it happens, but not to be kind of in anticipation, stressed with what's coming, and also not lingering along the way afterwards. So let's just try to translate this into an example here, maybe. Let's think of shell reorganization, which is something that happens quite frequently. What this illustrates, the way I see is that perhaps, certain person who has, further developed these areas of the brain could perhaps just wait for something to happen to then really be stressed and not be like with that speculative stress of, okay, oh, what happens, if I don't this, for the that. Of course, you can take the action, you can see what's coming, you can take action to be proactive for things, but you don't necessarily anticipate the stress, you don't get, that anxiety so high that actually, in a way, even diminish your ability to deal with the issue itself. So that is, how I would, translate those specific studies into more corporate situation.
Just a question.
Yeah.
What's meant by expert meditators? Does it mean like you meditate for years and do it every day, like 3 hours, or?
Yeah. In this case, this example was done with a group of experienced meditators, indeed, long-term meditators who have done this, like how many thousands of hours and a long life of meditators. That's how these studies were done. But having said that, it's also said that even short beginners doing short periods of meditation, like 10 minutes a day, it's already leads to some changes in the brain as well. What is being reported out in these studies that the amount of practice has to do with the amount of changes, yes, but even small changes can already lead to small practice can already lead to some changes as well in the brain.
Do you know if they also have to compare it to other like professional athletes or anything like that? Like there are other so there's meditation group and there's this control
group, yeah.
group of athletes. So they comparison studies with like professional athletes or people who do ballet or I don't know, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of specific studies like this, but indeed all of those studies have been with these control groups so that you can actually have a reference, yeah.
experience, professional athletes also have a similar response to that.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. And this is another study which is like a review of all different studies done. It's like a meta-analysis. And what they concluded is that these different studies have indicated changes in the brain associated to these three functions of attentional control, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. So really the ability to direct your focus, the ability to, let's say, respond to triggers more consciously instead of being just reactive, and also then the ability to become or be aware of things as they happen. These three functions have been identified as three key areas of benefits associated to meditation practice. And this was in terms of changes in the brain itself. And coming to the connection with the program itself, so surveys done with participants of the Search Inside Yourself program, done by before the participation of the program and after participation of the program, including this 28-day challenge, have indicated that there was a significant increase in terms of the ability to take perspective of the other person, and also to really pause and reflect and not react directly to things. So this ability to really have a conscious response instead of reacting. So this was also identified in these surveys.
Any idea why the 1/3 is not doing?
Sorry?
Do you have any idea why? So 2/3 has, but there's still a group that you're not reaching.
Yeah, I mean,
what are the roots? Kind of understanding what do they not follow the program properly?
I don't think that if you would follow the program, you would be like 100% perfect in taking perspective.
Most people do training, not everyone does the micro exercises, does follow up, right? So makes it really tries to embed it in their life. Is that kind of the differentiator between, say, the 60 and the 100, or is it like some people it's just more difficult for them, so it's just not more harder to train, or it's not there?
Yeah, well, I don't know those days, but how I would take this is that I think this is more like an indication, like it just points to a direction that this kind of practice may help in terms of the ability to take perspective for the other person, to be more conscious of your actions when responding to certain events or triggers, and not necessarily just reacting. So I would take it just as an indication of direction of benefits.
You shouldn't have invited finance people into this.
Okay, so this was just to give a bit of background of how the brain works and how these changes happen. But now getting a bit more into the technique itself of meditation, of mindful practice, we can think of